Welcome to the Tokumba Chronicles, a podcast about the journeys we take and the stories we make. In this podcast, I'll be sharing moving stories that are sure to empower, educate, and entertain you. Stories have an incredible way of connecting us to one another, uplifting us, and giving us permission to tell our own story. I will be speaking to entrepreneurs, trailblazers, and dreamers who have incredible and powerful stories to share. From their triumphs and tribulations, we'll be drawing out the details, the how-tos, and the lessons we can take away. Life is what you make it, and only you get to decide how your story is written. I hope by sharing these stories with you, you will live inspired and equipped to live yours out unapologetically. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the chronicles. I am your host and chief storyteller, Tokumba Kweki, a multi-passionate entrepreneur, founder of the award-winning Tokumba's Kitchen and London African Food Week. When I'm not cooking up a storm in the kitchen or regaling guests with my own epic stories, you are most likely to find me in the middle of the dance floor, bringing the party to life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tokumba Chronicles podcast. As always, it's your chief storyteller, Tokumba here, and it's currently the end of the first week of June 2020. And what a week he has been. A week in which the Black Lives protest that started in the US following the brutal murder of George Floyd by the police on the 25th of May has spread globally. As somebody who studied history and the slave revolts in Jamaica and Haiti, along with the civil rights movement of the 60s, I keenly feel and believe that this might be the change and revolution my generation has been waiting for. My guest on the show today, Amina Aweis, is a bit of a revolutionist and an extremely dynamic young woman who wears multiple hats as a software engineer, writer, and content creator. At only 22 years old, Amina is already charting her own path and being unapologetic in raising the issues she faces as a young Black African Somali woman. She shares her journey from making a decision not to attend university, despite it being accepted of her, to her more recent career working in tech and having to leave her comfort zone. Whilst Amina showed an entrepreneurial streak at a young age, she decided to pursue her more creative side and applied for a digital marketing apprenticeship after completing her A-levels. Here, she had her first experience of microaggressions as a young Black woman working in a very wide corporate space. Her next work experience in the film industry was a more positive one, in which her hard work and creative genius was not only recognized, but also appreciated and rewarded. Amina also learned the power of using her voice and how she could effect change with it. Now working in tech, Amina shares how she was able to make the move through her persistence and ability to network effectively. Amina is keen for many more Black women to enter the tech space and actively shares her knowledge on her YouTube channel. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the chronicles. Welcome back, guys, to the Tokumba Chronicles podcast. This is my first solo attempt without my video editor. So if the sound and the video doesn't look as great as it has been doing, it's because, I'm in lockdown and I'm doing this in my bedroom. And I'm so excited to speak to my guest today, Amina Aweis. Amina, can you just introduce yourself and tell the guests a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what you do and why I wanted to invite you to the podcast.
Hi, my name is Amina. I am 22 years old and I'm a software engineer, writer, and content creator.
Amazing. What? Software engineer, content creator, and writer. Listen, you are literally like after my heart. You're just one of those women that I admire so much, because you're basically like me. You do any and everything, because why not?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why not? Exactly.
Right. Before we get into where you are right now, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up?
So in terms of where I was born and so I was born in Kenya. And I moved to the UK when I was probably like 2 or 3 years old. And I've been living in London since. However, I recently switched into the tech industry and I got a job which required me to move outside of London. So now I've moved out, so I don't live in London anymore. That's been like that for the past year and a bit. But yeah, the majority of my life I've grown up in East London. I went to school there, got my first job there, went to college there. So yeah, that's a bit about like where I grew up.
Okay, amazing. And how would you describe yourself as a young person?
I would say I'm very curious. I'm quite social. Like I'm very much an extrovert. I do like going to events. Like a lot of events I've gone by myself because I know that I'm gonna come out with meeting new people, making new friends, connections. So I love talking to people. I love listening to people's stories. I love helping people, and I would say I'm quite driven because I just don't. Because of my journey, I don't like attach a time or age to limit what I can achieve or what I can't achieve. So I would say I'm definitely a go-getter. I'm just very curious. I love learning. Yeah, I think that's a bit of
Okay,
an
and
idea.
taking it back to say when you were in primary school, secondary school, what would you say? How would you describe yourself back then?
I think I was a bit of a social butterfly in the sense that I was never associated with one group of people. Like I got along with all the sporty kids because I was quite athletic. I got along with the nerdy kids because I was quite nerdy. I got along with the social kids, the quiet kids. Like I was in the student council. A lot of the times when decisions were being made in the classroom between students, I would be one of the people that they would expect to speak up on behalf of the class. Like I was very much, I think maybe with my African background, like my mum and dad, especially my dad, I was very close to my dad growing up. He kind of instilled a lot of confidence in me. And then that coupled with the fact that I did a lot of sports at a young age, that sort of added to my confidence and constantly being driven, trying to meet goals. And that kind of reflected in the classroom. It reflected in the subjects I was good at. I was kind of like I was kind of like across the board, I was fine. Like it was all the same. There wasn't anything that I was really good at and anything that I was really bad at. It was just all pretty much like standard. Yeah, like I think one thing I think that's carried on throughout my whole life as a person is that I've always been able to talk to all sorts of people. So I had all sorts of friends to the point where even teachers, when they had new kids join a class and they couldn't speak English, I'd be the first one that they'll ask to like mentor them or help them or whatever. And it was like, that's kind of always been like my strengths. I'm very good at connecting with people. I love understanding how other people think, how they are. And yeah, I think that's definitely how I've always been. I think my confidence has grown as there were moments in my childhood where I was a bit more reserved than other times, but I definitely have seen like a continuous progression in my confidence and in my ability to just go for things. Like if I set my mind to something, I'm just gonna go for it. And I think that was instilled in me from a very, very young age. So yeah.
Yeah, and watching your YouTube videos, it definitely comes across, and following you on Twitter and the, your voice is very, very strong. And, like I said, I am a much older millennial, and when I see, young women like yourself who are just so confident and being unapologetic in chasing after what they want and creating a space for themselves in areas where you wouldn't normally see someone that looks like you. It's just so inspiring for even someone like me. And so, yeah, I love, your YouTube videos give me so much jokes because, you can just see the confidence, even in the way you put the memes into what you're saying and your story. I love it. Love it. So going back to staying in your childhood, and I know it might seem a bit strange because you're only 22. And I'm sure, even at this age, you probably, because you've achieved so much, you probably feel much older than you are. But who would you say were some of your greatest influence growing up?
I think I didn't have like specific individuals, but I would say the women in my family. I'm a Somali woman, and Somali women are known for being very independent. They're very like confident in who they are. They're very firm on their identity and what they stand for. So I think being around a lot of women in my family that were just go-getters, they were very strong in their beliefs and they were very confident. I think being surrounded by that kind of gave me that sort of confidence. And then I think also the fact that I did quite a lot of sports. I think just watching sports in general, even though they weren't specific individuals, like individual athletes, I think just getting involved in certain sports and being around people that were always confident, that just cared about like performing really well, sportsmanship, that sort of environment probably influenced me more than just specific individuals. Although when I look back, maybe this wasn't necessarily my childhood, but more towards like my teenage years. That's when I started coming across like, you know, people like Mallory Blackman, Malcolm X, Akala, reading some of their work. That also influenced me during my teenage years. And so just seeing how unapologetically themselves they are, that probably confirmed a lot of the feelings I felt around the positive influences that I had from my childhood, and that just became like a continuous thing. And those are just some of the names. I think another person, and when I mention this, a lot of people get surprised, like Rihanna, like even though I don't listen to all her music and stuff, just seeing the way she just lives so freely, she doesn't let any boundaries like hold her with whatever she's creating, whether it's music, whether it's what she believes in, whether it's her brand. Her brand is just simply iconic, and she just focuses on being great. She doesn't let people limit her, because when you look at how she's grown, there are so many instances where people in the industry have tried to box her in one thing and tried to limit her craft, and she just simply went, no, I'm not having that. And she's just continued to grow and blossom despite all the backlash she used to get for years and years and years. She's now completely flipped that, and she's become a brand and icon in and of itself. And that sort of legacy has just always been inspiring to see in my own lifetime, and also just know that even after me, the future generations, they can look at someone like her and be like, she's a trendsetter, she has shifted the culture, she pushes for innovation, and she just creates. And you can see that she's so like self-assured, but still quite playful. She works hard, plays hard, and I think I'm really drawn to her spirit in that sense. So yeah, that's just some of the influences out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, yeah, Rihanna is just so amazing, and like what she's been able to accomplish. I actually remember like Rihanna in the early days, and to kind of see that growth. And like you said, like just being unapologetic in herself, and being able to kind of like not follow the trends, but really set the trends for herself and for other people is definitely very, very inspiring.
Yeah.
Now, I saw in one of your
I have
videos.
a lot of respect for her, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you being a Black African child, you went and told your parents you were not going to university.
Ouch.
What was that conversation like?
Well, about that.
Where can we begin? First
So
of all, I think... Go on.
No, I want to hear what you had to say.
I was going to say, like, I think, you know, you probably being the youngest, maybe that allowed...
I'm the eldest. I'm the eldest of 8. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm the oldest of 8. So it's like, when you're the eldest, you're setting the pace for the rest of the siblings. So you can imagine, like, I'm the eldest, Somali household, African household, And the thing is, right, a lot of people assume that just because you're creative, you're not academic. I was both. So I performed really well academically from primary school all the way up until my A-levels. So, and I worked really hard for that. And that's what my parents saw. So like for them, they never really like limited me as such. They let me do my sports and they let me study. As long as I was able to balance the both of them, they were fine. And also when you're the eldest, I don't know if it's the same with other African cultures, but like when you're the eldest daughter, especially, you're kind of like the third parent. Like
that's the same.
Like I'm qualified in a lot of things.
Culture.
You know, translator, manager, electrician, the whole lot. So it's like I kind of had a lot of responsibilities from a very young age. So they kind of trusted me in that aspect. But it's just the case of like the older generation, they've come from, you know, a place of war and famine, and they've come here to now live a better life. So for them, their idea of success is, you know, study, get your degree, get married, settle, work, etc., etc. They're used to that sort of linear structure, whereas I've kind of grown up in an environment where there's a lot more option out there and there's a lot more freedom of choice. So I had finished my A-levels, I got my grades, I was really happy, but I already kind of knew that I wasn't going to go to uni straight away, simply because I didn't know if I wanted to go into the sciences or the humanities or the creative sector. I didn't know, so I thought, let me not waste my money jumping into something for 3 years and committing to that and being unhappy. Let me explore my options, and worst comes to worst, I could always go to uni. I have the grades, it's fine. So that was my thinking at the time. And then I remember telling my parents, and they were confused because it's like, you got the grades, why are you not taking the next necessary step?
Yeah.
So they were a bit shocked, but I told them my reasoning. They weren't very happy. They're still probably not happy about it. They kind of do. I know, I can tell, especially my dad, like, I know he wanted me to go to uni straight away, but it's gone to the point now where they kind of just respect my decisions because I always explain why. And I think they trust me in the sense that being the eldest and having so much responsibility and being able to handle that, they kind of didn't have any choice, and it just had to leave me to it. So like, when I announced that and when I made that decision, I knew from then on that I would have to go absolutely ham to make sure that I have something to show for myself in front of my parents, especially. Like, I can't not go to uni and then, you know, have nothing to show for it. So it was added pressure on top of that. But yeah, the way they reacted, because you know how African parents are, engineer, teacher,
doctors, lawyers.
Soft, everything. Like doctors, lawyers, you just, it's just long.
They don't even matter. Just go to uni. Just go to uni and have that degree.
They do not care. Yeah, literally just have that piece of paper that they can just snap and WhatsApp it to all the aunties and uncles back home. And that's all they care about. But I think it's like, if we're going to be the generation that pushes for change, if we're going to be the generation that does things differently and shows how progressive it is, some of us are just going to have to firm it and be the first ones in line. And I just had to accept that very early on at 18. So yeah, it was an interesting time to say the least.
I'm sure. I mean, I started university in 2000, so when you were probably a few years old. And for me, I did psychology for my first degree. And when I look back now, I think to myself, psychology is such a useless first degree. I tell anybody and everybody who wants to go to university, like, do not even bother with psychology. Like, just go and do a part-time course and learn psychology if you're interested in that. But I have a daughter, and I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old stepdaughter. And one thing I tell them all the time is university is not necessary. Like, I firmly believe that, especially with the way the world is right now, and as you have shown, and people like you are showing, you don't need to go to university to do the things that you want to do. And you don't need that piece of paper to give you the affirmation that you need in the workspace. If anything, I think, going to university and getting a degree, maybe later on in life, would just solidify the learning that you've already had outside and just give you a more logical way of looking at the world, rather than actually going to uni because you have to go to uni to get a job, which in our parent generation, even in my generation, that was, pretty much the way. I mean, my mom, I'm from Nigeria originally. I was the first in my family to go to university, even though I was the youngest. And I remember, I'd never had a conversation with my mom. It was just expected. And even though my mom herself hadn't been to uni, it was just expected that I would do my A-levels and then I would apply to uni. And thankfully, my mom, the relationship that we had, she also trusted me. So I made my own choices about the uni that I was going to go to. There was no pressure on me to, be a lawyer or be a doctor. It was just a case of, okay, you've done your A-levels, what's next? Go to uni. And then, life kind of just happened. So, no, I mean, kudos to you, man. Honestly, you are a good
I just feel like uni in general, it's like, unless you're studying to be a specific, unless you're studying for a specific profession, like a doctor or an architect or things like that, unless you know exactly what it is that you want to do and it requires having a degree in order to specialize in that field, I think for the most part there's so many other options out there. And that's my opinion on uni, to be honest. I can see why some people go, and I can see why a lot of people don't go. I feel like I think what people need to be aware of is that there are other options, and you just have to be honest with yourself about why exactly it is that you're going to uni. And I'm glad I kind of realized that very early on, even though I was kind of winging it. So
yeah, amazing. So if we just take it back a little big step before we go into your current career, what was your first job, and how old were you, and what were the lessons that you learned from that experience?
So in terms of my first ever job that I ever got paid for, it was during A-levels. Like, I used to do tutoring, like once or twice a week. I used to tutor primary school kids in maths and English. There were times where, like, I used to help people with their work, like back in secondary school. I was that kid that sold cookies, donuts, crisps, the little entrepreneur in me. So in that aspect, I've always been like hustling. But in terms of like my first proper 9-to-5 job, I was 18. This is when I made the decision not to go to uni, but now I needed something practical to do. So there was like a digital marketing apprenticeship that was going on for a year that a friend recommended. And I applied, and because of my social media presence, I was writing a lot more back then than I was right now, and my online presence was growing at the time. So I was like, you know what, I want to explore that creative side a bit more. So I applied for this digital marketing apprenticeship for a year, and I got through. And then during that apprenticeship, you get placed with a certain company, so you can apply for multiple companies, and you do interviews with all of them. And then if they think you're the right fit for them, then they'll take you on. So they applied for this media agency where we worked with different charity organizations, small brands, to help them build an online presence. So that's when I was properly exposed to digital marketing, where I was learning things that more than about social media and marketing. So like more like the theory behind it, the little details and stuff. So I did that for a year. And that was really cool. And that I was like the youngest. I was 18 at the time, and there was like 500 or so employees. And I was maybe like one or two of us that wore a hijab. So I was the only visible Muslim woman there. I think there were maybe like 3 or 4 black people in there. But black women, there's probably like 2 or 3 maybe, and 1 black guy or something like that. But literally, like, that was when I realized, like, whoa, this place is just white. And it was full of men. And it was weird because the people that we were working with, the audiences, they were people like me. So they were, you know, from minority groups, they were women, they're from working class backgrounds, but the people creating this content looked nothing like the audience that they were trying to reach out to. So I found that baffling. Like, one of the most common memories that I remember was like, there was this white dude that will always come up to my desk and be like, oh, is this how Muslim women do this? Is this what this is called? And I'd just be like, why have you got 3 white male writers writing blog posts about British Muslim women when you can just hire one Muslim? Do you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. Or like, oh, can you tell me a bit more about rap culture? Because the only person they could think of in terms of rap was Stormzy. And it's like, why not just hire black people to create content for black people? Why not hire Muslim women to write content for Muslim women? And that's when I was really exposed to the disparity and the gap between the audience and the people behind the content that's fueling these ideas to people that are watching. And even though I picked up loads of skills, that's when I was first also exposed to like microaggressions, corporate culture. Oh my goodness, I thought I was petty until I went into the corporate world. I was like, yeah, so this is what these people move like. So this is what your average George and Sebastian move like. All right then. The 18-year-old me was like, bruh, this place is like the jungle. Like, it was mad. Like, everything was so like political, and the corporate world was just a mess. And I realized from that job, I was like, yeah, there's a lot to take on here. And that job, while I learned a lot, I also learned how important it is to value yourself, because there were so many instances where I kept getting shut down as a black woman, as a black Muslim woman, as a woman in general. And it got to the point where I was constantly getting gaslighted. And I was so young. I was like 18, turning 19 soon. And it was like, this is not normal. But at the time, like, I felt like it was such a regular occurrence that I thought maybe this is what the working world is. Maybe all adults are annoying like this. I don't know. So then I remember that I had the option to renew my contract, but I really didn't want to, except I just didn't know where else to go. So I started exploring my options, started, reaching out to people on social media, networking online, talking about the things that I liked, and then people are reaching out to me. And then I came across this opportunity for a 3-month scheme with a film and production company. And I looked at the application form and I was like, this is great. And it's a paid internship, because one of the things that a lot of corporations do, which I don't advocate for at all, is that they exploit young people by offering them unpaid internship. And it's like, a lot of the reason why people from, people that are black, people of color in general, the reason why they don't end up being in these media spaces, because they keep getting offered like unpaid jobs, and it's like that's the biggest barrier for us to get into these industries. It's money. Not all of us have rich parents that, you know, can facilitate these things for us, and we can just go about and work. A lot of us have responsibilities. So I found that to become a huge pattern when I was applying for jobs, especially because I didn't have a lot of experience. But then I came across this internship scheme, and it was 3 months and they were paying. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it was a film and production company. And I was already curious about the film industry. I love watching movies. I love watching films. I go to cinema quite a lot. So I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get to the film industry, but I'm going to apply for this anyway. I had no experience in film and TV, nothing. They had 2 roles available. There was one in production and one in marketing and PR. And they're only going to pick 2 people, and over like 300 people applied. So I'm just like, okay, the chances of me getting it is not very little anyway, but I'm going to apply because it looks really interesting. So I applied and I got offered an interview, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I just went in there. I did my research on the company. I kind of stalked them on LinkedIn for a bit. So like, I knew their names, but I just pretended, oh yeah, hi, nice to meet you. Like, I've already seen your bio, girl. So like, you know, we were talking and I really got along with them. And just based off the interview, I could see that the vibe was completely different to where I was working, even though it was still part of media. The culture looked different. Again, it was the diversity-wise, it was pretty terrible. But like, it felt different, and I felt like, wow, they're actually listening to me. And then a few days after my interview, they were like, we really want to take you on. And then I got accepted. And then, yeah, that experience compared to my first job, very, very different. Like, this internship did not feel like an internship at all. Like, they treated me like a normal employee. Like, they saw so much potential in me in terms of what I can write, how I can market things. I got to work with BAFTA nominated actors and actresses. I got to do like media campaigns for them. Like, during the time, there were two people that were nominated for a BAFTA. There was one actress and one actor. This is around the time, she's not very known, but she played Lady Macbeth. Her name is Florence Pugh. She got nominated for a BAFTA, and then I went and asked my manager, should I do a campaign for her so she can get votes and nominations? And she was like, yeah, go for it. She kind of just left me to it. And then it got really popular to the point where the actress's publicist reached out to my manager and said, whoever put this campaign together did a really good job. And then I got credit for it. Whereas where I used to work before, even if I did something well, they would never credit me for it. So it's like, I saw that difference. And, you know, at this time I had just turned 19 now. And it was like, whoa, the stark difference was crazy. And then it was that internship that made me realize, okay, do you know what? If you stick to who you are and you stand your ground, it might take a bit longer, but people are going to recognize you for your work. And that's also in general what I learned about the film industry, because I was in the film industry like almost 2 years. And in the film industry, it's always a get to know basis. Like, who you know is way more important than what you know, because people remember your personality. Literally, yeah. People remember how you speak to them, your personality, how you come across to them. And so it got to the point, like, sometimes I'd go to board meetings and I would write the brief that they're using for the meeting. But then as soon as I'd come in, there'll be random people saying, oh, can I have a coffee? Can I have a tea? Because they just assume I'm just this little intern that's just serving tea and coffee. It was mad. Like, I'd be sitting there and I'm looking at everyone and no one looks like me. Like, I remember the first time we were working with a PR company and I saw the first of a black woman, and you know that look that black women give to each other, like,
and the nod,
I see you kind of look, and the nod. I was like, oh my god, that was the first time. Little 19-year-old me, I was like, oh my gosh, there's another one like me. Like, I was so gassed, and I was so relieved. I was like, okay, maybe I'm not in the wrong place. But then over time, I realized, like, word of mouth is so powerful in the film industry because it's literally about who you know. So then word was spreading, and because I stood out, because like there's not a lot of people that look like me in terms of, like, you know, being black, being Muslim, and I was visibly Muslim. So it's like, even if they don't remember my name, they'll just remember that I have a headscarf on, and people know who they're talking about. So then once I realized that, I leveraged that so that, you know, I would be like, oh, what's working on? Can I help out? Or let me do this, or let me do that. Like, one time, right, there was a movie that was being produced. It's been out for a while, but we saw the first cut and everyone was being asked for feedback. But I was too shy to tell feedback at the moment, because I remember watching this first cut and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many plot holes in the story, the way it was filmed. I had so much feedback. So then what I did was that after that, I went and wrote a long ass email to one of the producers, literally writing a whole film review. And to this day, he still has it. And that, being able to do that gave me opportunities in the film industry that I did not expect, because then he remembered me for that. And then he went and told this person, oh, this person's very analytical. She's very, you know, she can do this. She sees ideas in this way. And that was the first time like someone had actually taken my feedback, because when they showed the final cut, it's like, I could see bits that they actually implemented, and I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Wow.
And that kind of gave me like a confidence boost, and it made me realize, like, you know what, you have ideas, you have the creativity, you have the drive, it's just a matter of time. You have to keep pushing. And I think like being around older people, because I didn't go to uni and I wasn't around people my age, being around older people makes me realize like most adults are just winging it. Like I used to think adults, they got their life together, they got a house, this and that. These times they're complaining about the same things as me, and I'm like, there's like a 20-year age gap. What's going on? This is a scam. Like adulthood is actually a scam.
Yeah. See, funny for me, I learned that lesson watching Sex and the City, because I was in uni when Sex and the City started. I was like, I think it was in my first year. And exactly what you just said, I remember like going to my friends every week and be like, how are these 4 white women who live in upper class Manhattan society lifestyle having the same basic ass problems I'm having with men down here in Tottenham in London? And it was just so interesting. And
literally.
like, yeah. But I really love your story, and I love, you know, not only the fact that you're driven, the fact that you've been, even at times when you didn't feel like you had the confidence to speak out in a meeting, being able to like, okay, do you know what, I have a voice and this is my feedback, and I'm going to write that email, and I'm going to put myself out there. And even though, you know, being a young Black, visibly, like you said, visibly Muslim woman in 2019, 20, 18, 17, it's not easy. So for you to be able to stand your ground and be like, you know what, this is me, this is how I'm going to show up, and you're going to take notice of me, and you're going to realize that actually I do have something to contribute. And then when you give that feedback, seeing how that feedback is then implemented would definitely make you even more confident to be able to speak up next time, because you're like, if this producer can take on board little old me's review and use that to improve what he's offering, then that means I have something to give. And, you know, and that comes across in, like I said, in your videos, in how you speak on internet. And I think this is why, you know, even though you are young, a lot of people look up to you and respect you and probably come to you for advice and inspiration, because you have shown that actually you don't need to be 30 and 10 years of experience to know what you're talking about. And I really admire that about you. It's amazing. So you had the internship in digital marketing.
Long.
So what made you then decide to move into tech?
So after the internship, someone told this French producer, who again had just been nominated for a film award for BAFTA. Her film was called God's Own Country, and he got nominated for a BAFTA. And at the time, it was like a big deal, especially in France as well. She heard about me, and my experience with that producer made me realize having a few people vouch for you is so important, and it's why you should stay authentic to who you are. Because when I finished my internship there, I wanted to explore my options, and this opportunity came up to work with her as her assistant. And she exposed me to so many different aspects of the film industry. I got to do a bit of editing, script editing, a lot of PR, a lot of marketing. I got to work on like so many different campaigns as well, outside of just films. Like I got to work on a campaign for the UN. I got to work on a short film that was featuring a Paralympic athlete. Like, she exposed me to so much. And the difference between her and a lot of people in the industry was that some people in the industry exploit young people in the name of helping, but really they're moving like gatekeepers. Whereas this specific French producer, like, she was vouching for me, and she was literally putting money where her mouth is. Like, whenever she needed a project, she kept hiring me over and over again, to the point where other people in the industry were like, why is this, you know, woman who's won so many awards, why does she keep hiring this 19-year-old? And
Yeah.
because of that, that gave me even more opportunities. Like people like her showed me, if you're persistent and focused and you stick to who you are and you don't water yourself down, because it's very easy. Like when you think about all the microaggressions that you face as a Black woman, all the sly comments, all the things that make you want to feel small and introverted,
Yeah.
like it's very easy to get lost in the shadows and just to get pushed away. So you kind of have to be really fierce and you have to have thick skin in the film industry. And people like her and, you know, other women especially that vouch for me, that, you know, got me into spaces that I wouldn't even have known about. Like people like that made me realize as long as you keep pushing, do what you got to do and get there. And when you get there, leave the door open for the next person and pass the mic on. Because I felt like one of the disappointing things in the creative scene especially was that when I did come across people that looked like me, I used to get really happy. And then once I got to know them, it's like, okay, some of them were a bit like, it felt like they just wanted to be the token and it was just only them and everyone else had to fight for that same spot. Whereas when you look at it, there's way more space for everyone. Like you can't sit here and complain about diversity and inclusion, but you're happy being the token and you know, you're happy having your spot and no one else have it. Like I bumped into so many people like that. And when you're young and there's no one there to like fully guide you, it's very hard because you're literally winging it all the time. And I felt like if I didn't have the confidence that I had or the courage that I had, I think it would have been a different story for me. But like coming across those barriers was really like difficult. But then I came across people who did look like me, who were also women, you know, that proper vouch for me. And that inspired me to be the way I am now. Like if I know something, I'm happy to share it because I've never actually lost out by helping people. I've never missed out on any opportunities by passing on an opportunity to someone else who I think would be better suited to. So like, it was just always, I just always had to keep pushing. But then even when I was doing all of that, the creative scene is very, like, it's very rough out there. Like you really have to put yourself out there. And it got to a point where I found myself qualified for a lot of the jobs that I was being offered. So I kept, and this is the problem I have with the whole diversity and inclusion thing with a lot of companies. They're all for it as long as they've got a Black person for their website or it's all like entry level. When it comes to like the senior positions or the management positions, it's still very much white. So like what had happened was I had built a set of experiences and I was building up qualifications along the way as well. And I was applying for like roles that were slightly higher up, but they just kept boxing me in like entry-level roles and internships, even though I was way too qualified for that. And I just felt a bit frustrated. So I was like, okay, let me branch out a little bit within marketing and see what's out there. And that's when I came across things like UX, UI design, WordPress developers, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And I was like, okay, what's all this stuff? And that's when I got exposed to things like this. Also, like some of the Netflix series that I got to work on, even though I was working on the marketing side of things, I was exposed to a lot of the digital team. So whether it's designing the covers, whether it's doing A/B testing to see what covers on your Netflix. You know, when you go on Netflix, like sometimes when you go on your Netflix, you're watching the same show, but the post is changed. And in the background, what's happening is there's a lot of testing running and they test it against different audiences to see which one people engage with the most. I got exposed to a little bit of that. And seeing things like that, I was like, okay, this is more technical, but it's still pretty cool. Like, I like understanding why people do certain things, why people brand things a certain way, the colors that they use, the font, all those things started to come into the mix. And then I just kind of ended up falling into all of the tech side of things. And I thought, you know what, let me see what this is about. I started watching YouTube videos about tech. Initially, it was about UX and UI design because that was like the next creative thing that was still quite technical. So I was exposed to that, and the more I got exposed, the more I realized like this is cool because I can now tap into the logical side that I do miss, because I did low-key miss like the sciencey side of things, the maths and the logic side of things, and I wanted a bit of that while still being creative. And this industry seemed like it was very open to that. And the difference between the tech industry compared to a lot of other industries is like they seem to be very open to people, even though they don't have degrees or even though they come from a completely different background. It was more about like, what is it that you can do and are you enthusiastic to learn? So when I took all of that into account, I was like, okay, this seems more challenging, and as a career it looks more promising. So I'm going to start exploring that. So then I just branched out and did my research, and that's sort of how my interests continued to build up, and that's what ultimately led me to transitioning into tech, basically.
Okay, amazing. And once you then made that decision, I mean, I've watched your YouTube videos, so I kind of know a little bit about the story, but for the audience who are listening and for a lot of people, and again, for me, one of the reasons why when I saw you is I have been for the last couple of years considering how I can kind of get into tech, because I am very, I am very analytical and I pick things up very quickly, and I'm also very creative. And it's why I'm now at the stage where I'm building WordPress websites from scratch, and I'm like, wow, I did that. Like, I didn't know I could 2 years ago, and now look at me now. So for a lot of people out there who are wondering, because, when people hear tech, they think of Silicon Valley, they think of, Mark Zuckerberg, they think of
Bill Gates.
exactly. So, how do you, what were the things that you needed to do, especially not having that university degree? What were the steps that you took that allowed you to break into tech?
So when I was doing my research and I was looking at job descriptions on LinkedIn for a lot of these marketing roles that involve like things like front end developing, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, WordPress. And what I did was I wrote a list of the skills that I already do have, and then I matched it against some of the keywords in the job description. And then where I found the connection was where I kind of gauged where I think my strength would be in terms of if I was to transfer. So I looked at all my transferable skills and I was like, okay, it seems like the way things are going, I see myself probably doing like front end developing, like websites, things that are more visual. And so the more I looked at these job descriptions, the more I was like, okay, let me try and upskill myself. And I was watching YouTube videos, tutorials, but I wasn't taking it seriously just yet. Maybe like later, a few months after doing all of that, I started coming across things like boot camps. But then with boot camps, a lot of them are so expensive. They're like 10 to 15K for like a few months. So I couldn't afford that. So I was just kind of going on things like Free Code Camp, Code Academy, and just going over like basic things like what is a website? How does the internet work? What's HTML? What's CSS? And I kind of kept doing like these small activities, and I'm like, this is really fun. And then I was doing that. And then at the time I was also tweeting about it. I was like, oh my gosh, guys, I really want to get into coding. This coding stuff looks really cool. And then someone on Twitter shared a link to a boot camp that was being run by Code First Girls. And I already heard good things about Code First Girls. So Code First Girls is like it's an organization that pushes to get more women into tech, and they do a lot of like evening classes, summer classes. So I already heard people that had done their courses, and they're like, yeah, they're really good, they're really supportive. So with this specific course, it was like a trial run. Like they had never done this before. So they teamed up with a telecommunications company, which is where I work at now. And for the first time ever, they were going to train 30 women from scratch, from all different backgrounds, teach them how to code, and then get some of them might qualify for interviews, and then they could potentially apply and work for the company. So I applied for that. I didn't hear anything for ages, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to explore my options. I was still, at the time, I had just finished one of my film projects that I was working with a producer on. And so at this point, it's like, okay, now I'm unemployed. I need to take this seriously. So I was applying for different jobs, and I had finished the application for the boot camp, and then another job popped up that I was really interested in. It was like an animation job kind of thing. It was still marketing, but it had a bit of animation, and you'd be making like all these cool graphics and working alongside like YouTube and stuff like that. And I really wanted to get that role, and that was like going to be a step up in my career. And so I had that offer, and then around the same time I got offered onto the bootcamp course. So I had to make like a huge decision. Do I stick with my comfort zone and just carry on climbing the ladder and think about coding later? Or do I switch careers, because this is something I've been interested in for a while now? And then I think ultimately it just came down to what felt more challenging for me, like what excited me more. And at the time it was coding. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to invest 4 months, and the bootcamp was free. They were covering food and travel, which is also what swayed my decision, because it wasn't going to be like one of those expensive bootcamps that I could afford it. So like I went with that one ultimately, because it's like, if it doesn't work out, I've still got my marketing skills. I can always apply for jobs and stuff. And if anything, I could just add this to my CV. So that was kind of my mindset. Again, having to tell African parents that you're doing a boot camp, which you've never heard of, and it meant 4 months not working. They were just like, oh, for goodness sake, this woman.
You have come again.
You know the ones that they're like, is it me that you're trying to kill? You know the ones
I did not kill my mother, you would not kill my mother, you would not kill me.
Literally, that's literally my mom. And she's like, oh, this again. So, and at that point, they're kind of just over it. They're like, you know what? You seem to know your day, just do it. Yeah, and we're not going to stop you anyway. So I did the 4-month boot camp. That stuff was so intense. The learning curve was mad. Like, I felt like someone just pushed me to the edge of the cliff and went, jump. That's literally how it felt like. Just learn how to code. It was the way you think, the way you approach it, so different to what I was doing before. But like, it was one of those things like once you got the hang of it, it feels really good. But like when you're stuck, it hurts. And it was really intense. They crammed like years of knowledge into those 4 months. And even after I finished that boot camp, there was still so much I didn't know. And I think this goes for a lot of industries. You're really going to learn the most on the job. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's creative, whether it's tech, whether it's finance, whatever it is. So like, that boot camp was great because I got to meet so many great women who are on the same journey as me. I got to learn so much. I got to learn a lot about myself as well and how I think and process things. But yeah, that everything just went at 100 miles per hour. Like 4 months later, you know, I'm being interviewed for a job. Somehow I managed to do it well. And they offered me a job and I was like, wait, this is going a bit too fast. And now I have to move outside of London and start fresh in a new town. Nobody knows me. And this is the first time I've moved outside of London. And I remember like getting out of the train station and I looked at this town and I was like, okay. There's no black people. Right, this is going to be fun. Literally, it took me like weeks before I saw a black family. Basically 2 months before I saw a black family walking in the street. And I was like, okay, what have I got myself into? Even in the building, like where I work, there's thousands of employees, over 10,000 employees. It's a massive site. And the security guard, he doesn't even have to double check my ID like that, to be honest, because I'm one of the only people that wear a headscarf in the whole entire space, full stop. And there's like thousands of employees. And it was like, yeah, this is actually mad. It was a completely new environment. I felt like I was starting fresh. It felt weird. It feels like, you know, I don't know what a midlife crisis really is like, but it felt something similar to that. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Who am I? What is this? And I just felt like I was reinventing myself because it's like, I was so used to growing up in London where it's multicultural. There's lots of black people. There's lots of people that look like me. And now I go to a town where no one looks like me. And on top of that, the tech industry is so male dominated. And it's like, apart from me and my roommate, she's Nigerian as well. Like, apart from me and her, in terms of like just the block and apartment we live in, we barely ever saw black people, like maybe once in a blue moon. It was interesting. It was like, wow, so this is how people live like it was so weird. Like even things like trying to find halal meat. And I'm thinking, do I actually ask someone here? Because would they even know what it is? I was vegetarian for the longest until I found a Turkish shop that did like halal takeaway, and I was like, yes. Like literally, I remember I used to go back to London for the weekend, and I was like, Mum, let me go in the kitchen for a second. I was everything halal. Literally, I was like, I'm taking everything, and then I'll bring my stuff there. It got that bad, but then I got to know the town a bit more, and I was like, okay, I know where all the spots are now. So like, it was a complete culture shock, and it exposed me to a whole set of things that I wasn't aware of before. So like, one thing is that on my team now, since the lockdown has started, there's a change. There's one other girl now, but before I was like one of the early girls. There's only like, in a team of 50, there's maybe like 3 or 4 women.
Wow.
Yeah, I think now it's 5. Yay. Halfway. So like, before that, it was just all men. And it's like, they're all men and they're all white men. And even though I get along with them really well, they're a really great team, have great managers and everything, and they're very supportive. It's very draining to be around people that don't look like you on a day-to-day basis, because it's like, when you have a lunch break, or like when you just want to chat with someone that looks like you, there's no one. And it's like, it took a long time. It took me like maybe 7-8 months to come across other Black people that weren't the cleaners or the janitors. Like, because other than that, those are the only people I was talking to. So it was like, it just became very draining. There's no other women around you. There's no one else that looks like you. And I didn't realize something like that would affect me so much mentally, because it's like, I just saw it as like a job is a job. You got in, you know, just work hard, keep your head down. But it's like, when I started this job, I have never been as quiet as I was at that time. Like, the way you see me now versus if you saw me in the workplace, you'd be like, these are two different people. Like, I was so quiet and reserved. And to this day, I probably feel like my colleagues think that of me, even though it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but when you're a Black woman, it's like, if you're too loud, they'll feel a certain type of way. If you're too quiet, they feel a certain type of way. So basically, either way, they're going to feel a type of way. So it's just long. And having to manage that in an environment that you're not used to, in an industry that you're so new to, it's a whole other story. Like, it was just long. Even to this day, it's like, I get along with them, but just knowing that I'm not around people that look like me, it really hits you hard, especially when you're not in London. And it's like, it's an interesting experience so far, I have to say. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Sounds it. And in terms of where are you now in your journey, where do you see yourself in terms of, you know, at the beginning you talked about, you know, working in tech, being a content writer and content creator and also a writer. Where do you see Amina evolving into in the next 2 to 3 years?
It's a weird one, because I feel like, I think one thing I've accepted about myself is that I just know I'm not one of those people to stick to one thing and just be stuck in one box. Like, I really don't like to be boxed in one thing. I don't like having boundaries placed on me where it's not needed. So I feel like there's so many things that I like, and when I think about it, what is actually stopping me? There's not a lot of things stopping me from being multifaceted.
Yes.
So it's one of those things, like, and I've had this since I was 18. It's like, I don't know exactly what it is I'll be doing, but I know that A, I have to be great somehow, and B, it's like, whatever I do, it has to be something that I genuinely like doing. It has to be meaningful. It has to be something that contributes to the people. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, there was never like a specific job title or a specific role that I had to be boxed in order to do what I want to do. I just feel like when I'm being left alone to just create and just be me and allow myself to tell my story and just let me get on with it, I tend to thrive better. And I've just realized, like, I just don't see myself being stuck at one job. I definitely see in terms of my tech career in general, there's certain things that I do want to explore a bit more, because the tech industry is huge. Like, not everything in tech is about software engineering. Like, there's so many other technical roles that don't even require coding. And I kind of want to explore that a bit more. I want to explore the creative side of the tech industry a bit more. But it's like, since the lockdown especially, it's made me think about this a lot more, because it's like, I've been watching like tutorials on photography. I've been playing around with like Canva and just trying to understand basic concepts of design.
I love Canva. Such a game changer.
Yeah, literally. Literally recently, like maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, someone on the TL dropped an image of what they call their logo. And I was like, nah, I've watched enough tutorials. Let me reach out to this girl, because she's a mutual. And I was like, hey, I've seen your logo. Is it okay if I play around with it? And she was like, yeah, sure. And I went on Canva like maybe like an hour or two, and I sent it back to her, and she was like, wait, how did you do that? And I was like, I don't know, I was just playing around with it, and I was just watching some tutorials, and she's like, whoa. And she likes it to the point where she wants to use it now. And it's like, just being able to have that sort of freedom to just create and just let your imagination run wild, while also having the discipline of the specific craft. I feel like that as long as I focus and hone in on that, and I'm authentic to myself, then I'm quite open to where I want to end up going, because I already know it's not going to be one thing. At the end of the day, as long as I'm storytelling, as long as I'm helping people, as long as I'm satisfying my vision and my brand, I'm kind of okay. Like, I'm happy, because I've realized as well, like, being around older people, it's like, most adults are basically big babies without the nappies. They're just winging it. Like, they're still confused. They're still, you know, trying to figure their life out. So I just realized, like, I just stopped putting like a time limit on things. Like, it's very easy to, because I found myself comparing people that I look up to, or people that I see that look like me, that are inspiring. Like, I'll be looking at some of my Twitter mutuals and they're doing this, they've got a book deal, they've got this and that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so behind. I feel so this and that. These times they're like 28, 29. They've got like a whole 5-6 years on me. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to slow down, but still carry on being me. And it took a while. It took a really long time, but I think people are starting to really appreciate the fact that if you are authentic to yourself, even if people don't listen to you for the first few years or whatever, eventually people are going to be like, you know what? This person has been doing this for a long time and they've just stuck to who they are. And, you know, I haven't allowed like big brands to change me like that. I know that I haven't gone out of my way to like gatekeep people and keep people away. Like, I really go out of my way to just be as transparent as I can, which is why I really enjoy making YouTube videos, because it's like, there's so much out there. And I feel like, especially in the YouTube space, for example, there's not a lot of Black women talking about tech. There's only 3 YouTube channels that I've come across with Black women talking about tech. And it's like, I'm taking advantage of the fact that I'm Black, I'm Muslim, I'm visibly Muslim, and I'm a woman. That combination alone, talking about tech, that space is not saturated at all in the YouTube scene, like at all. So I just feel like I'm just going to take advantage of that and just be myself, because it's very easy to get overlooked and it's very easy to get put off by that. But eventually, people nowadays, especially the times we're living in, you need to be authentic to who you are. Yeah, what a time to be unapologetically Black, unapologetically Muslim. Like, this is the time to really hone in, because I feel like, especially as Black people, like, we've come so far and people are starting to really understand that we've been the blueprint and we're always going to be the blueprint. No matter how much you try to copy us, replicate us, no one can do it like Black people can. And I think now, like, especially our generation, like, we're really so unapologetic about it. We don't care. Like, we actually just go out there and just do it. And it's getting to the point where it's paying off financially now. Like, some of these brands, they have to take us seriously because we're literally generating an income for them. So I just feel like, based on that, there's so much freedom nowadays. And I have this mentality now where it's like, if the space isn't there for me, I'm going to go and create it. If you don't want to open the door for this opportunity for me, cool, I'm going to go and create my own one. It's either that or I smash the door in and I put myself at that table. Because I feel like if we just wait around and wait for someone to give us a little crumb, it just opens up the doors for us to get exploited. And there's been enough of that with Black people. Like, we've been exploited left, right, and center, especially Black women. Like, we've contributed so much, and people still have the audacity to look at us like we're clueless. So, like, I think we're now starting to realize the power we actually have and the influence we actually have. So just taking all that into account, I've just realized, like, I'm just going to do me, and I'm going to bring as many people like me onto the game as much as I can with whatever I know. And I'm just allowing myself to be open to learning and progressing. And then whatever I'm learning, I'm documenting and then sitting in front of a camera and talking about it. So that's basically how I'm doing it. So yeah, that's how I see myself.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, Amina, like I said, from the first time I came across your YouTube videos and just following you on Twitter, I love your voice. I love that you are so unapologetic in yourself. And I love that you're sharing the knowledge. The quote, knowledge is power. I always expand that knowledge is power only when it's shared. And, and that's what you're doing. Exactly, and you're doing it in such an authentic, beautiful way. And I really love it. And, thank you for coming along to share your journey on the Tokunboh Chronicles. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. Just before we wrap up, what would you say would be a parting piece of advice you would give to our listeners about anything?
Keep pushing and keep creating. And the reason why I say that is because even if your numbers don't show it at the moment, you never know who's watching. I feel like one thing that a lot of young people are told without enough context is that, yes, work hard, but you also have to be persistent. You also have to be disciplined, because having those things, right, that's what creates the opportunity, like luck and timing. That's when those things start to work in favor for you. Because I can sit here and, you know, say to young people like, oh, or just to people in general and be like, hey, just work hard, you'll be fine. But the reality is, while that's important, the timing is also important. Where you live is important. Your financial status is important. Who you know is important. So I feel like my advice is, especially for the people that are in the digital space and they're very active, really look at the content that you're putting out there and own it, and find ways to create content out of it if that's what you want to do. Because chances are that, in fact, it's never just a chance, for a fact, especially if you're a Black woman, and I'm specifically speaking on behalf of Black women, especially for Black women, we've got so many ideas and we're so talented. We are literally the blueprint. These brands are watching you. There are pages that are watching you. There are people that are watching and pretending to not see you. So keep creating content, because all it takes is that one opportunity, that one person to say yes, that one person to give you a chance, that one person to retweet your content, to change the whole course of your career and what you were aiming for. I feel like that, coupled with the fact that just to stay authentic to yourself, like just own who you are, because a lot of people might not like it at first. A lot of people might say, oh, you're doing too much, you're doing the most, you're doing this. But honestly, just start. It doesn't have to be like perfect. I think you've seen my, I posted a tweet of a picture, a screenshot of my first video versus my 4th or 5th video. Like Absolutely. You can literally see the improvement in quality. Like I look at my first video, I'm like, oh my gosh, what the hell is that? But at the end of the day, if I hadn't started, I would have never improved. Exactly. I would have never built up. So like, start, create content, keep pushing. Even if you think no one's watching, you're wrong. This is the internet we're talking about. And document your progress. I feel like with young people, especially, like we're so used to seeing these influencers, these big brands who just show their success and they just show all the wins. People are not showing you the L's that they're taking. For every like 20 L's that me or someone else takes, we're not going to show you any of that. We're just going to show you the wins and the end result. So don't be disheartened if you feel like other people are already doing bits, they're already ahead. You don't know what their journey was like to get there. So don't let it put you off. You just need to start and document it. Because I feel like when you document it, it's easier for you to enjoy the journey because you can see that progress. Yeah. And one more thing. Women, and especially Black women, shine your eyes. Okay? Shine your eyes. I promise you, when people say certain industries are oversaturated, lies. The creative scene is not as oversaturated as you think. The tech industry is nowhere near as saturated. If anything, it's the opposite. Like companies are literally begging for more women now. Like, and of course I'm gonna ride out for my Black Muslim women or Black women, because you know they're the people I relate to the most. Women, we need to start moving like men. We need to have the confidence and audacity of a white man when it comes to applying for jobs, applying for opportunities, and bigging yourself up. Because I feel like we're so humble and shy about our achievements. And then when you actually look at it, it's like, you've actually done a lot more than you think. And you probably know a lot more than you think. So please shine your eyes and open your ears because it's a big world out here and you are in a lot more control than you think. And it's okay if you're confused at the moment. It's okay if you're nervous or you're worried. Just start, wing it, and figure it out along the way. Trust me, that's what most adults are doing. They just make it look good. So that's just my advice.
Wow, that was amazing. Well, just wrapping up, what are the ways people can get in touch with you? So where would you like to connect to? I'll obviously link in your YouTube channel, also your Twitter. Do you want to tell listeners now who might want to join you and, you know, just be inspired by you and your journey?
So my Twitter and Instagram is the same. So it's Yeah She Writes. So YeahShewrites. So Yeah She Writes. Code, articles, tweets. So yeah, that's how you can connect with me on social media. My YouTube channel is Amina, Amina Aweis, Aweis. And then, yeah, so if you follow me on my socials, all my content, I always attach resources to it. One thing I did, especially when I got into the tech industry and people were asking, like, how do I start learning how to code? Where do I look? So I kind of created a Google Doc with my current job role. I broke down my job role into exactly what frameworks I'm using, what languages I'm using. And then from that, I categorized each language and I attached free resources and courses that are beginner friendly that you can get started on. So I have that all in one Google Doc, which I do share. It's always in the description in my YouTube videos. It's on my social media. So yeah, and then that's basically the best way to reach out to me: Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I want to do more lives, Instagram lives with people to try and help like upcoming creatives or upcoming people that are trying to transition or just need general advice of like self-confidence, self-love and stuff like that. So yeah, just keep up with me on my socials. I'm quite active at the moment, especially during lockdown. So yeah.
I think all of us are a bit too active on social at the moment. And yeah, but it's been such a pleasure having you on the Tokumba Chronicles podcast.
There's so much happening. 2020 is just like, whoa.
Listen, like 2020, somebody said last week was the longest year. And it literally feels like it. This past week, the world is there's a lot going on.
Last week was Eid. For me, it was Eid last week.
I know.
Like, exactly last week.
I know.
Insane. And we've had the madness that has happened. Oh my goodness.